When you hear about the nursing profession, you've probably heard that it is one of the most trusted professions. It's a stable, high-paying, and rewarding career. But what if I told you the statistics tell a different story? Nurses are constantly dealing with burnout, extremely dangerous working environments, and now a staffing crisis like we've never seen before. The numbers I'm going to talk about in this video might just change the way you think about nursing. My name is Jason. I've been a nurse for over 12 years, and my wife, Monica, has been a nurse for more than 11 years. I'm breaking down the numbers behind what's really happening in nursing today. First, the basics. What does the market look like for nurses? How well are they paid? How bad is the staffing crisis? Are nurses really risking their lives every day? Stick around because what you're about to hear might make you rethink everything that you thought you knew about the nursing profession. Every 2 years, a survey is put out by the National Nursing Workforce. It breaks down several different topics related to nursing statistics, and I'm going to go over some of them in this video. The first one that I want to talk about is the type of degree that nurses get. About 35% of nurses in the US have associate degrees, and 47% of them have bachelor's degrees. As you can see here, master's degree nurses, we have PhD nurses and DNP nurses. And if you are a nurse, you probably have come across nurses from the Philippines, nurses who graduated in the Philippines. But believe it or not, the majority of nurses in the US have graduated in the United States. And here we have 94.8% of nurses having graduated in the US, and only 2.8% of them graduated in the Philippines. I mean, that doesn't exactly let you know where these Filipino nurses are coming from, because many of them are studying in the US. It just so happens that 2.8% of these Filipino nurses graduated and got their degrees in the Philippines. All right, so let's talk about employment. 70.2% of nurses are actively employed as full-time nurses, and 10.9% of these nurses are actively employed in nursing part-time, with 7.8% of nurses working per diem. The reason why these nurses are either unemployed or not working at the moment, for the majority of them, it is because 46.8% of them are taking care of family, but 22.6% of them were unemployed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then 10.7% of them are unemployed because they are having difficulty in finding a nursing position. And surprisingly, 11.9% of nurses are unemployed because they believe that their salaries are inadequate. So they might have left the profession to find work elsewhere where they believe they could get paid more than they did in their roles before they left. The majority of nurses are working 32 to 40 hours a week, and that's 54.6% of these nurses. 19% of nurses are working between 41 and 50 hours. 6% of these nurses are working 51 to 60 hours, and 4.6% are working more than 61 hours. 57% of these nurses are working in a hospital setting, with the second highest number in ambulatory care. And the third highest are just nurses working in other areas that are unrelated to the hospital setting, nursing skilled facilities, assisted living facilities, home health, and all these other cases. All right, so let's go over earnings. RNs can work in several different capacities, and I've talked about the different levels of education they can get, associate degree nurses all the way to the advanced DNP level. But in between there, we have nurses that can work as ICU nurses, many different specialties, ICU, ER, tele. They can become NPs, midwives. They can also work as CRNAs. And we're going to go over some of the salary data for these nurses with regards to which specialty they've chosen to work in. If you've chosen to work as a nurse in community health, you are going to be earning the least amount of money. As you can see here, these nurses are making about $67,000. So these nurses are working in community health, and it's not many. And there's a small subsection of these nurses, 164 of them that responded to this survey, working in community health, earning $67,500 a year. At the highest end, we have nurses that are working anesthesia. These are our CRNAs, and we have 263 of them that responded to this survey, making $188,000 a year. These are the median annual earnings. That means you take all of the numbers from lowest to highest, arrange them in that order. The one that falls in the middle, that's the median salary. These nurses making $96,000 a year are nurses that are working in informatics. Now, I've interviewed a nurse previously who works in informatics, and he was working in Fresno, California, making a decent amount of money. But once he moved to Sacramento, him and his wife, they're both nurses, were able to almost double their income. I say this because in some cases, you may be making less than the average where you're located, but if you were to move to a different location, even if it's within the same state, you could 1.5x, 2x your income just by moving to a different location. This is something that I talk about all the time in our videos. You need to think about where you're working and how you're working in order to increase your income, decrease your expenses, and hopefully not have to work until you're 65, 67 years old before you can actually retire. And if you're interested in more information, I do have a program where I show nurses how to move to Northern California, and I show you what step to take if you're interested in moving to Northern California and earning more than $200,000 a year while working fewer than 40 hours a week. So I do that in my coaching program. You guys can click on the link in the description as well as the link in the top comment. All right, so let's keep going here. Third highest earning profession is going to be information technology. It's all in the same area. You're going to be dealing with tech. So this is one area, if you want to make more money, you should become well versed in tech and anything tech related if you want to make more money, because this is where we're going, especially with AI taking over the future of the world, really, not just the United States, but everywhere. So information technology is going to be number 3, and these nurses are going to be earning $93,500. But I'm going to go over some of the numbers as it relates to the different locations. If you don't know this, you can actually look up statistical data reported to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They actually collect this data on a monthly basis, I believe, but they put out the reports on an annual basis. And you can go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or you can just go to Google and type in registered nurse salary BLS. That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And here you are in the first link right here at the top. You're going to click on it. Oops, click on it, and you can find out data related to your profession. You can also do this for any other profession. If you work in another area, let's say you're a doctor, you're in a specific specialty, you can look this up for your specific specialty as well. But the median annual salary for nurses in the US is $86,000, right? $86,000 is a decent amount. It's definitely higher than the median annual salary in the US, but let's just look at these numbers, right? Like I'm going to go to an after-tax calculator, and I'm going to see how much this is actually equivalent to after you take off the taxes. And let's go to the highest tax state. So Smart Asset is a website where you can calculate your after-tax income. And I'm going to type in the salary. And let's say you're single and you live in San Francisco, for example, and you're going to be making a lot more than this in San Francisco. So let's actually use a state where this is pretty much the median annual salary. And we can use Texas in this situation. So I'm going to use Houston, Texas. So this is what my annual take-home pay is going to look like in Houston, Texas. And this is after federal taxes are deducted, because remember, Texas is a no income tax state. So your taxes are not going to be deducted by the state, but the federal government will take some of that. And how much exactly? Well, let's go check this out. 10,000 of this is going to go towards federal taxes, and 6,500 is going to go towards FICA, which is, things like Social Security, Medicare, and so on and so forth. And then one thing you should know, though, about these no income tax states is that even though you're not paying income tax, you are paying taxes in other ways. For example, the state of Texas has high property tax rates. There's tolls you have to pay when you're driving on the highway. There's sales taxes that you have to pay, and they collect their taxes in other ways. That's how the state of Texas and other no income tax states work. They collect their taxes in other ways, even though you're not paying income tax. So let's go over some of the other numbers as it relates to the different states. I want you guys to see, even within the same state, you may be earning more money if you move to a different city. And that's what I mentioned before. So let's look at this chart over here. The highest paying states are California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. In California, the average annual wage is $137,000. The average annual wage in Hawaii is $119,000, in Oregon, $113,000, and so on and so forth. But let me show you how you guys can look this information up yourself on a national level, on a state-by-state level, or on a city-by-city level. So if you go to the top over here, remember, you're going to go on Google, you're going to search for registered nurse salary BLS, and you're going to click on the first link you see. So again, let me just show you what that looks like right over here. This is the first link you see. You're going to click on it. It's going to take you to this page. On this page, you're going to zoom in right over here, And you're going to see it says create customized tables. You're going to click on that, and it's going to take you to this page where you get to select these options. Now, what I always do is I look at one occupation for multiple geographic areas. I click on that one, and I'm going to scroll down till I find registered nurses. Now, I've already done this. Okay, so I've selected registered nurses. I'm going to go to state. In this case, I'm just going to find salary data for all of these states. You can do it on a city by city level, and I'm going to show you how to do that later, but let's do all states. And you're going to select the data that you want to output from this report. So I just want to find out what the hourly mean wage is, the annual mean wage, hourly median, and the annual median. I'm going to click on next. Usually I do Excel, but just for the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like in HTML format. So I'm going to click, and now you're going to be able to see a list of every single state in the US and their salaries. The lowest earning, Alabama, you're going to get paid $65,900. And this is the annual median wage. But if you look at the annual mean wage, which is the average, remember the average can be brought up by people that are making more than the average at the high end. So it's 71,000 if you're looking at the average. But I usually look at the median because the median seems to be more accurate. California is 133,000. And again, Alabama, you're making 65,900. And this one says 36,000, but that's Puerto Rico. So if we're talking about just the continental US and Hawaii, then you're going to be looking at these numbers where the salaries are going to be much higher than $36,000 a year. All right, so let me show you how to look at one occupation for multiple geographic areas. If you want to look at the data on a city by city level, and I've done this before in several videos, so if you want, you can click on the videos that I link in the description of this video, and you'll be able to find more data regarding this specific topic. So I'm going to look for registered nurse, and in this case, I'm going to select metropolitan or non-metropolitan area. I'm going to click this, and I'm going to click all MSA in this list. I'm going to click next, and again you can just select hourly mean, annual mean, and I'm going to also select hourly median and annual median wage. I'm going to click next, and in this case I'm actually going to select Excel. I want to see an Excel spreadsheet of this data. I'm going to click here to open it because I want to sort this data. Oh, you know what? I only selected annual median. I forgot to click Command or Control and select the list of things that I wanted included in this report. So I was actually supposed to do this and I forgot to do that. But let's go back. Let's look at the annual median wage. And I'm going to sort this list from smallest to highest. So the lowest paying is going to be, again, Puerto Rico, right? So this data is on a city by city level now. And I sorted it from lowest to highest. And as you can see, Puerto Rico is going to be the lowest paying. But if you go all the way down, and you work your way towards the lowest paying city in the continental US, you're going to see that Iowa, South Dakota, Tennessee, those cities are going to be farther down this list. You have Tennessee, Alabama. Alabama's paying $64,000. Then you have Huntsville, Alabama, paying $63,480. Dothan, Alabama, $62,000. And if you work your way all the way to the bottom of this list to look at the highest paying cities, Vallejo, Fairfield, California is going to pay you $187,000 a year. That's the median salary. And San Francisco, Oakland, and Hayward are going to pay you $181,000. Now, it's really surprising because a lot of people probably don't know that Vallejo and Fairfield pay this well. But the reason for that, I'm guessing, is because many of these nurses are working at a hospital called Kaiser Permanente, which is one of the top 5 paying hospitals in the entire United States. And if you don't know that, I have plenty of videos that talks about that as well. But now let's talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, because this really made a huge impact on the nursing profession. And the pandemic affected RNs mostly through its impact on their workload. More than 60% of nurses reported an increase in their workload due to the pandemic. And the next most reported impact was a change in practice setting. About 12% of RNs reported that the pandemic had no impact on their employment at all. If we break it down even further, about 24% of nurses reported they were emotionally drained every day, and another 20% reported they were emotionally drained only a few times a week. But more than half of RNs at least a few times a week. And what is this a result of? In my opinion, many nurses across the country are probably going to agree with me on this, but I've been a nurse now for 12 years. So I've experienced this from the moment I became a nurse till this point. And it's actually a lot better now because we're very well staffed where I work. But in various other settings that I've worked in, the staffing was horrendous. And every day that I would come to work, it would feel so overwhelming that I did not want to be there most days. And like I've oriented nurses in the past who have told me they've only been in nursing for a few months, maybe 6 months to a year, and they feel like quitting the profession. And the reason for that is because they feel like they are understaffed, they're overworked, and feels like it's not getting better for a lot of these nurses. And I think one way to fix this is through legislation, because states like California already have legislation in place. We've had legislation since the 1990s where nurses cannot get more than a certain number of patients here. Like we have very strict ratios. Nurses in the ER can't get more than 4 patients. If you have an ICU patient, you can't get more than 2. And nurses in the ICU can't get more than 2. I mean, that's common across the country, but in some states and some facilities, they actually do exceed 2 patients in the ICU setting. And then in the telemetry setting, nurses can't get more than 4 patients as well. And if one of their patients happens to be on a drip, then the limit is 3 patients. Same thing goes for like a step-down patient or a step-down floor. These nurses can't get more than 3 patients in the step-down floor. But if you have a nurse who's working med-surg here, then that nurse is only going to have 5 patients. I say only, but it's really more than any other department. So these nurses are actually working a little bit harder sometimes than the nurses in the other units. And then we have the state of Oregon. So the state of Oregon finally passed a law that pertains to nurse to patient ratios, and it's going to be in effect officially, I believe it's this year, next year, where if the ratios are not being maintained for the nurses, the hospitals and the facilities can face very severe fines. So California and Oregon are currently the only states in the country that have very strict and concrete nurse to patient ratios written into their legislation. There are other states like New York and Massachusetts and several others that are working on legislation to make concrete nurse to patient ratio laws, but they're not there yet. And I used to work in New York, and I speak to former co-workers and they tell me it's gotten a little bit better, but there may be days where they have no choice but to take as many patients as are coming into the unit or are coming into the hospital. This is going to lead me to my next topic, and I think the next topic is going to take a turn for the worse in this video because it's something that's happened previously and it's only getting worse. And this is the topic of violence in the workplace, and I'm just going to show you a video to illustrate what I'm talking about.
3rd floor, there's some guy in here that's nuts.
Fear swept through the building after suspect Stephen Scantlebury roamed the hospital.
Yes. Okay. Listen. Where in the hospital? Oh my God.
And detailing the violent attack on nurse Leela Mala with weapons that may have been used.
Did he hurt somebody with the scissors?
Yes.
He stabbed a nurse?
He went away. What?
Okay, where is the injured nurse?
The nurse is in the floor.
The nurse is on the floor. Is she breathing?
Yes.
One of the callers identified himself as the CEO of the hospital.
We had a Baker Act beat a staff member unconscious, now running around the building.
You said they assaulted the employee until they passed out?
Yeah, unconscious. I'm not worried about that part. I need the Baker I dealt with.
So I hope you heard that. I'm not worried about that part, right? He's not worried about the fact that the employee is unconscious. He's more worried about what's going on with the patient and the fact that they're housing this patient who is a Baker Act patient. So it's basically what it means is a patient that's being held against his will because he's either a danger to himself or a danger to other people. And this is a law that exists across many states in the US, and they just go by different names and have different nuances to them. In California, we call it a 5150, where you can hold the patient for up to 72 hours against their will so that you can determine what's causing the mental breakdown and how you can, try to prevent the patient from harming himself or harming somebody else. But that is what the CEO is more concerned about in this call. He's not concerned about the employee who was left unconscious, who was beat to a pulp and is now in the ICU and might not be able to see for the rest of her life because of this patient who potentially did not belong in this hospital because the facility that the patient was in was not certified to hold these type of patients. So this is just one instance. And this is in the last week that this happened, right? This happened in, I believe, like February 18th or February 17th of 2025. And then we have another one here. Let's go and listen to this one.
2 people are dead and 5 others hurt following a hostage situation inside a hospital in York. The gunman and a responding officer were killed in the ensuing shootout. According to York County District Attorney Tim Barker, the shooter, identified as Diogenes Archangel Ortiz, entered UPMC Memorial Hospital this morning with a bag holding a handgun and zip ties. The DA says Ortiz went to the intensive care unit where he took several staff members hostage. When police arrived, Ortiz ordered them to get back, and they complied. Then police again made an effort to approach Ortiz. DA Barker describes what happened next.
When he came out, Mr. Diogenes Archangel Ortiz came out holding at gunpoint a member of the UPMC staff who was also had her hands tied with the aforementioned zip ties. Holding her at gunpoint, coming out into the hallway, the officers, left with no recourse, did open fire and did shoot and kill Diogenes Archangel Ortiz.
During that confrontation, 3 officers were shot. 2 are in stable condition, but Officer Andrew Duarte from the West York Borough Police Department was killed. A nurse, doctor, and custodian were also shot. They're in stable condition at a neighboring hospital.
This situation resulted in 3 officers getting injured. 2 of them are in stable condition, and 3 employees of the facility also ended up getting shot, with one of them being a doctor, one of them being a nurse, and another one being a custodial worker. So these are the kinds of things that we as healthcare workers, especially as nurses, have to be mindful of when we come to the workplace. And many hospitals do not have the security in place to protect the employees. This is something that we need to really pay attention to, and we need to fight for in legislation so that states mandate proper security to all hospitals. And this is the issue, because when it comes to the future of nursing, if this continues, then the staffing shortages that we have at the moment are just going to keep getting worse. Here we have over 262,000 registered nurses that graduate yearly, but 33% of them quit within the first 2 years. Should be enough of a signal to employees that something needs to change. There is a current shortage of 78,610 nurses, and the nursing shortage is expected to continue in the next decade. In fact, it says here that the latest data showed that 900,000 nurses, almost 1/5 of the total number of nurses in the United States, plan to leave the profession by 2027. Now, people don't believe when I say that there is a nursing shortage, but the reason why most nurses don't believe this is because they may be having a hard time finding a job, and many of them are looking for work in the most popular hospitals in their area. Of course, it's going to be hard to find a job in the most popular hospital. These are the hospitals where you're competing against the best of the best, or you may be competing with too many other applicants. On the other hand, you have hospitals, smaller hospitals, community hospitals that are starving for nurses, but are not getting enough applicants because nobody's interested in applying for them. So when you have here 900,000 nurses that plan to leave by 2027, and you add to that the fact that we have now a country in which nurses have to be afraid of coming to work because their lives may be put at risk, it adds to the level of insecurity, the level of fear that nurses come to the workplace with. And it increases and adds to the burnout rate that we have in this country. And if staffing shortages continue, then patient care will continue to worsen and hospitals will struggle to stay open. And the next 5 years are going to determine whether this profession rebounds or collapses under its own weight, because it's only going to get worse. So we want to see exactly why Monica and I moved to California and how we were able to reduce our working hours, increase our income to the point where we made $336,000 last year while working fewer than 20 hours a week. Then you're going to want to watch this video here.